We all heard of the famous missions: Apollo 11 landing on the Moon, the Mars rover sending selfies from the Red Planet, or the James Webb Telescope peering into the edge of the universe. These are the headline missions, the ones they celebrate, the ones they want you to know about. But what about the ones they don't? What about the launches that happen in silence? No live stream, no cheering engineers, just a rocket piercing the atmosphere and total radio silence about what it's carrying. You won't find them in glossy space documentaries. They are buried under layers of military code names, vague mission descriptions, and when asked, officials simply say, "It's classified." Welcome to the world of secret space missions, a shadowy realm where satellites spy from the dark side of orbit, spaceplanes disappear for years at a time, and entire programs operate off the books, quietly shaping the battlefield above our heads. Some of these missions were only discovered after something went wrong, like a satellite crashing with radioactive debris or a budget report that accidentally named the Black Project. Others, still a mystery. We know the launch code, we see the rocket go up, but what it's carrying, where it's going, and what it's doing, total silence. And the deeper you look, the stranger it gets. Odd mission patches, cryptic symbols, spacecraft with no listed payloads. Are these surveillance programs, military weapon tests, or something else? In this episode, we are uncovering 5 of the most secretive space missions ever launched, by the US, Russia, China, and India. Some are Cold War relics, others are still active today. All of them are shrouded in secrecy, because while most people look to the stars for discovery, some just want the high ground. It sounds like science fiction. A satellite hovering silently over the vastness of the ocean, watching every move, tracking submarines beneath the surface in real time. But during the height of the Cold War, that wasn't fiction. It was Project Aquacade, a top-secret joint operation between the US Navy, the Central Intelligence Agency, and the National Reconnaissance Office. Its job? To watch the world's oceans. Officially, you won't find much about it. The name Aquacade wasn't publicly known until 2012, when documents were quietly declassified decades after the program began in the late 1960s. Even then, the details were sparse, but what we do know is enough to raise eyebrows. At the time, both the US and the Soviet Union were locked in a high-stakes game of nuclear cat and mouse. Ballistic missile submarines, or boomers, roamed the seas undetected, capable of launching a full-scale nuclear strike at any moment. So the United States developed Aquacade satellites, part of the Navy Ocean Surveillance Satellite System, with one clear goal: track enemy submarines, constantly, from space. Using a network of satellites in highly elliptical orbits, Aquacade could monitor vast stretches of ocean, pick up radar emissions, and intercept communication signals, all while flying above international territory. No ships, no drones, no need to trespass, just silent eyes in the sky. But here is where it gets even more interesting. The program operated under layers of disguised identities. Early launches were labeled Circon, a codename designed to throw off foreign intelligence. Later, they fell under broader NRO designations, grouped with other surveillance missions to mask their purpose. To this day, no clear images of Aquacade satellites have ever been released. No launch footage, no official diagrams, just artist interpretations, scraps of documents, and whispered speculation. So what were these satellites really capable of? Could they just detect subs? Or could they, as some believe, pinpoint missile launches, intercept encrypted signals, or even map the ocean floor? We don't know, and that's by design. Because Project Aquacade wasn't just a tool, it was a warning. The Cold War wasn't just fought on land and sea, it was waged in orbit, quietly, relentlessly, far above where anyone was looking. And Aquacade was watching even when no one knew it was there. During the Cold War, the Soviet Union didn't just build rockets, they built mysteries. And at the heart of that very mystery was a single word: Cosmos. From 1962 to the early 2000s, the Soviets launched over 2,500 missions under the Kosmos designation. But here is the catch. That name didn't actually describe what the spacecraft did. It was just a mask. See, Cosmos was a catch-all label, a way to bury the true nature of a launch under a veil of ambiguity. Some of them were scientific, many were military, but when a rocket failed, when a lunar lander missed the Moon or Mars probe went silent, it was quietly renamed Kosmos, rebranded to hide the embarrassment, as if it had always been just another satellite. But the secrecy wasn't just for face-saving. Many Kosmos satellites were part of a massive military infrastructure, surveillance, reconnaissance, anti-satellite tests, even nuclear detection. And one of the most infamous? Kosmos 954. Launched in September 1977, Kosmos 954 was part of the Soviet radar ocean reconnaissance satellite program. Its purpose? Track NATO ships using radar from orbit. Its power source? A nuclear reactor. Less than 4 months after launch, something went wrong. The satellite lost control and began to descend. In January 1978, it re-entered Earth's atmosphere and scattered radioactive debris across a 600-kilometer path in northern Canada. This incident, known as Operation Morning Light, triggered a joint US-Canadian cleanup effort. The Soviets denied wrongdoing, but the message was clear. The Kosmos program wasn't just secret, it was dangerous. And this was just one mission. Others like Kosmos 186 and 188 were part of early satellite rendezvous experiments. Innocent orbital ballet? Maybe. But Western analysts suspected they were testing satellite interception, a prelude to space-based weapons. Still, more Kosmos launches were tied to ASAT programs, infrared missile warning systems, and even electronic warfare platforms. But to the public, they were just Kosmos. A generic name, a silent object in orbit, another dot on the tracking board. But behind the numbers and the acronyms was a hidden world, one where the Soviets used space not just to explore, but to compete, to deceive, and to control. And to this day, many Kosmos missions remain officially unacknowledged in terms of purpose. Just numbers, just names. Because in the shadow of the Cold War, even space had secrets. When most people think of India's space program, they think of milestones. The first Asian nation to reach Mars, a lunar lander on the Moon's South Pole, a cost-effective space strategy that impressed the entire world. But behind those headlines, something else has been quietly taking shape. A far less public side of India's journey into orbit. One that doesn't make it into the press releases. It's a transformation of ISRO, the Indian Space Research Organization, from a civilian agency into a dual-use powerhouse, quietly backed by the Indian military. And at the center of it all, a growing web of classified military space missions, some of which are hiding in plain sight. In 2019, India made headlines for a very public demonstration, Mission Shakti, an anti-satellite test that destroyed a live satellite in low Earth orbit. The world watched as India became the 4th country to demonstrate such capability. But few people asked, how long had that capability been in development, and what else was flying under the radar? Because Mission Shakti, it wasn't a one-off. It was the result of years of quiet work by DRDO, India's Defense Research and Development Organization, which has increasingly collaborated with ISRO on classified defense programs. One example, GSAT-7 and GSAT-7A, communication satellites launched under vague descriptions. In reality, they are dedicated to the Indian Navy and Air Force. Encrypted military comms, real-time strategic coordination, no public details, and no full specs. Then there is RISAT, a series of radar imaging satellites capable of all-weather day-night surveillance. Some were openly described, others not so much. And according to the analysts, India has also begun developing early warning systems, spy satellites, and electronic intelligence platforms, all under layers of bureaucratic opacity. There is even speculation that India is working towards its own military space command, following in the footsteps of the US Space Force and China's Strategic Support Force. So, why the secrecy? Because India, like every major power, understands something crucial. Space is no longer just about science. It's about security, deterrence, and influence. And while the world praises India's peaceful missions to the Moon and Mars, its military quietly prepares for the next frontier, one where the enemy isn't on land but 400 kilometers above it. Not all launches are meant to be watched. Some rockets take off in broad daylight, with cheering crowds and countdowns televised around the world. Others, they don't. They launch at night, from remote pads with no payload information, and instead of NASA or SpaceX logos, they carry a different badge. 3 letters, NRO, the National Reconnaissance Office. It's the most secretive space agency in the United States. And yes, it's real. Created in 1961, the NRO is tasked with designing, launching, and operating the US government spy satellites. Its missions are often labeled under a cryptic naming scheme: NROL followed by a number, NROL 32, NROL 91, NROL 44, and so on. To the public, those numbers mean nothing, but behind each one is a satellite that's probably watching something. Some NROL satellites are believed to carry massive optical telescopes, capable of photographing objects the size of a baseball from hundreds of kilometers above Earth. Others are said to be SIGINT platforms, signal intelligence collectors that intercept radio transmissions, phone calls, and even internet data across the globe. But here is the twist. We don't actually know what many of them do, and the NRO isn't saying. In fact, the only thing they do release are mission patches, and those are something else entirely. Many NRO patches are filled with cryptic symbols, dragons, swords, aliens, Latin phrases, and strange mascots. One showed an octopus wrapping its tentacles around the globe. Another said simply, "Nothing is beyond our reach." Now, officially, the NRO says that patches are morale-boosting artwork, just inside jokes, but to outsiders, they feel more like veiled messages. Signals that these satellites aren't just tools, but strategic assets in a global chessboard. And while most American space missions are handled by NASA or Space Force, the NRO operates in parallel, under different oversight with black budgets and limited public access. Many of its satellites are placed in Molniya orbits, geostationary orbits, or highly elliptical polar paths, depending on what they are designed to observe. And with each launch, the speculation grows. Is this one for monitoring adversaries, protecting satellites, or something we haven't even imagined yet? Because when the payload is classified and the agency behind it says nothing, the sky becomes a canvas for conspiracy. But one thing is certain, the NRO is watching, and unlike us, their view of Earth is crystal clear. They are officially called remote sensing satellites, launched for Earth observation, resource tracking, and even weather monitoring. At least that's what the Chinese government says. But ask any defense analyst what the Yaogan satellites are really doing up there, and you will get a very different answer. Since 2006, China has launched over 100 Yaogan satellites under the banner of peaceful scientific use. But the frequency, configuration, and orbital patterns of these spacecraft suggest something entirely different. Military surveillance, precision targeting, electronic intelligence. Many Yaogan satellites are launched in triplets, flying in triangular formations that are ideal for triangulating naval targets from space. Others operate in synthetic aperture radar modes capable of imaging through clouds, smoke, and even darkness, perfect for 24/7 battlefield monitoring. And some are believed to be ELINT platforms, short for electronic intelligence, designed to intercept enemy radar emissions, track naval fleets, and map electromagnetic activity across the planet. In other words, they may not just be taking pictures. They may be scanning, listening, and watching. What makes this especially significant is timing. Many Yaogan launches have coincided with increased Chinese naval activity in the South China Sea, Taiwan Strait, and Pacific Theater. And some of the satellites are believed to be directly linked to China's anti-ship ballistic missile program, often nicknamed Carrier Killers. If that's true, it would mean China now possesses a space-based targeting network, capable of tracking aircraft carriers from orbit and relaying the data to missile systems on the ground. But of course, officially these are weather satellites. Their launches announcements are vague, their specifications are never released, and their orbits, while publicly visible, raise questions that are never publicly answered. The US military has quietly acknowledged the capabilities of the Yaogan constellation and even redesigned some of its Pacific strategies in response. Yet China continues to insist the Yaogan program is civilian, just a little secretive, just a little coincidental, just watching the weather. But the truth? In modern warfare, space is not neutral ground. And the Yaogan satellites may be the eyes of a future battlefield, silently tracking, targeting, and transmitting, while the rest of the world checks the weather report. So now you've seen it. The missions that were never meant to be seen. Project Aquacade quietly watching the oceans from above. The Kosmos Program hiding failures and spying from orbit. India's growing network of military satellites cloaked in peaceful ambitions, the cryptic symbols and black budgets of America's NRO launches, and China's so-called weather satellites that seem a little too interested in the world's warships. These missions don't appear in textbooks. They are not celebrated with documentaries or public countdowns, but they are happening right now above our heads. Because space, once imagined as a domain for science and exploration, is now a contested battlefield. A place where the high ground isn't a metaphor, it's a strategic reality. The satellites we know about may only be half of the story. The rest, hidden behind classified documents, secret launches, and layers of silence. But the question that lingers is this: if this is what we've uncovered so far, what else is still out there? Are there missions even deeper in the black? Spacecraft launched with no public record at all? Systems designed not just to observe, but to disrupt, to disable, or to deceive? We may never know for sure, but one thing is certain: space is no longer the final frontier, it's the next frontline. So what do you think is the most secretive space mission that's still flying today? Drop your theories in the comments, whether you believe it's surveillance, weapons, testing, or something no one's dared to admit yet. And if you want to keep uncovering the mysteries of space, both known and hidden, make sure to subscribe. Thank you for watching, keep looking up.